Good evening, very warm welcome to the West Yorkshire Football Show here on YouTube, across Facebook and Twitter as well. I'm Chris Bell and I'm joined by Lewis Sale. We're taking a look really because it seems very early, but the football season is back underway this weekend, Lewis, with the start of the non-league scene across our region, in particular the Northern Counties East League and the North West Counties League. Combined across those two divisions, we've got no less than 20 clubs across our region. So there's no excuse for not getting out and supporting your local sides if you're a supporter of one of the bigger clubs across our region. But firstly, Lewis, thanks for joining us, mate. How are you doing?
Not bad yourself?
Yeah, very well, mate. Very well. Looking forward to the start of competitive proper football again.
Yeah, I think the season begins earlier and earlier now. We're talking normally your season starts at middle of August from back in the glory days when we were youngsters, and now you're beginning at the end of July. And gets earlier and earlier, but I'm sure there's a lot of teams getting excited. I know we've watched a few games together during pre-season, and teams are looking pretty sharp. And we comment quite a lot that the non-league friendlies are quite different to some of those friendlies that may include some professional teams. I think friendly is quite a loose term to use.
Yeah, I think even from the very first one that we attended, which was at Steeton, and we will bring out actually Josh Chapman from Steeton FC very soon. It was, there's kind of right from the off, there's no holding back when it comes to the tackles and the challenges flying in, even in pre-season friendlies.
And it depends who we're trying to impress. Are we trying to impress the employees who we're playing for, or maybe another team that we may be playing against? I think I've always seen the non-league friendlies as a bit of a different animal, I think, compared to kind of the professional clubs who, obviously they're full-time and, obviously they've got a lot more resources and money and rehabilitation, all that kind of stuff. And I think, to be fair, you probably look around the non-league scene, and especially, regionalised like we're talking about tonight, probably a lot of them know each other. So it's bragging rights at work the morning after.
Yeah, very much so. We'll now bring in Chappers. Thanks for joining us, mate. Of course, you're the media officer and, well, just kind of Mr. Steeton AFC, really, as well as doing, obviously, things for the Keighley Cougars as well on social media. But for you, mate, and for Steeton and the Northwest Counties, it's been a busy old pre-season for you guys. How have you, on the whole, got on?
Yeah, I think pre-season's been really positive. We've played, every team we've played's been a level above us, and we put some good showings in. Great win against Dackley that you guys saw. Absolutely tore Squires Gate to shreds last Saturday. Got a bit of bragging rights over Silson, and got a comfortable win against Eccleshill as well, I think. And even in the games we've lost, probably with the exception of the first half against Frickley and the first half against Colin, I don't think there's really been anything to get too worried about, and plenty to be positive and excited about.
Just talk to us a little bit about last season, because on the whole, it was a very good season for Steeton, bearing in mind that, of course, the club have only been in what you class as the pyramid for, the last 3-4 years, am I right in thinking?
Yeah, since the year before COVID, yeah. Yeah, I think last season were a bit strange, actually. I think a lot of people wrote us off as well. We always tend to start the season amongst the North West Counties pundits as a favourite for relegation, and we only won one game in the first 2 months of the season, and it was like, oh God, what's going on? I think there was a point early October where we lost to Nelson and we were in the relegation zone. And then we went on a mad run basically for the rest of the season, bar probably that first month of the new year where we didn't win a game. We were up there, we were in the mix, Briggsy were bagging for fun, Toby were providing loads of assists, and there were plenty to get positive about, to build on and off the pitch. And, I think it's put us in good stead for this coming season.
Yeah, and you mentioned Briggsy. Obviously, there's one name that won't be on the Steeton team sheet this season because he's gone off to Bury. And, how hard is it competing with the likes of, or at this level, with the likes of Bury and obviously previous years, Macclesfield have come down to the league above you sort of thing. How difficult is it when there's always these sides of late that are what you would class as kind of, historically EFL sides or at least National League sort of sides?
Yeah, I think that kind of expands to other clubs at our level as well. We don't have the biggest budget at Steeton, and the majority of our lads are lads who play for mainly the love of the game. And, we've got a core group of a good 7 or 8 lads who have been at Steeton for years, even since the county amateur days. And, we've seen it this pre-season. You know, we've lost Briggsy to Bury. Charlie Lloyd's gone to Darwin. You know, they're spending big in our division. And yeah, I think it's testament to Roy and Stu and Pete as a coaching staff that they can go out and even now attract players who have played a lot higher up the pyramid, you know, to come to Steeton and be a part of something.
Who are the new arrivals that we should be keeping an eye out for Steeton?
Louis Faldini, you know, you guys will probably see him out and around. Farsley, Eccleshill, Yorkshire Amateur. You know, Louis looked really sharp in pre-season. He gives us a different kind of threat up front. And I think the way he likes to play off the shoulder is very Briggsy-like. But I think unlike Briggsy, you know, he's not afraid to track back. And I think as we saw last Saturday at Squires Gate, when he's got that link-up play with Raleigh and Emmanuel, he's a dangerous threat. And, you know, when you had Toby Jeffrey and players like that who weren't even in the squad last week due to injuries and family commitments, you know, I think he could very easily step up the way Kale and Briggs have stepped up, get 30+ goals. Manny Amole is an absolute beast down the wing. You know, he's big, he's strong, he's physical. You know, he's got Squires Gates right back, probably still having nightmares about him after last Saturday. And I think there's the centre halves. You know, we've had 4 centre halves at the club and we've lost all 4. Al's gone to Oxenhope, Charlie Lloyd's gone to Darwin, Johnny Hodge and Nathan Teo both retired. So, you know, Josh Kane from Silson, the new skipper, great signing, experience, knows this level of the game, has won this division during his time across the roundabout. And I think he'll form a great partnership and provide some real experience and knowledge as well to the 2 young lads we've brought in, James Edgley from Bradford City and Ed from Halifax. So, you know, I think there's plenty to be excited about.
Excellent. And Lewis, I suppose for Steeton, the one thing that's always been a consistent is having Roy Mason as the man at the top.
Yeah. And, you know, Josh knows him better than anybody else, doesn't he? But, you know, Roy's been there from you know, day one. He's almost, you know, the Adam of Steeton, isn't he, really? Where he's almost the genesis of how it's all gone. And credit to Roy, who's been there, you know, enough years now. And, you know, his fruits are, you know, kind of bearing fruit now. You know, obviously Josh knows far better than us, but, you know, probably highest ever finish in a pyramid last season, and continuing to kind of push up the right end of the table. And, you know, we see Roy around a lot of other games locally as well. He's got a keen eye on different players. And I think just keeping your eye on the market and actually see what's happening is a big advantage for, you know, clubs like Steeton, who at the moment are probably, you know, shopping in a different market to the North East Counties League. We've seen examples in the past, for example, Campion, who've, you know, struggled to hold on to key assets because of being in the North West Counties. You know, the travelling is quite more considerable in that North West Counties League. And so you are buying players from kind of over the border a little bit in the Lancashire area. So, Ryan and the guys have done amazing, and, you know, he sent us a bit of message early, and, you know, I'll feed it to Josh and get his thoughts on it as well. And you mentioned about the signings, you know, he still thinks there's a couple of areas we want to improve in as well. Your thoughts on that, Josh, and where you think Matt Roy might be looking at to strengthen the team?
I think in terms of strengthening the team, I think he probably would be looking for another experienced centre-half. You know, James and Ed are only young. James is 17, Ed's 18. And, you know, I can speak firsthand from watching every team in the North West Counties twice over for the last 4 or 5 years. You know, there are some big physical, experienced strikers in this division. I'm thinking straight off the top of my head, Leon Creech at Darwin, Michael Gervin at Baker, you know, Kevin Gonzalez at Ilkley. You know, there's some really good, talented strikers, physical at our level, who will cause lots of defences, lots of problems. And I think really in terms of bringing defenders in, that's probably Roy's target area right now, as seen by the fact, you know, 3 defenders alone this week. So, you know, I think we're overloaded in terms of midfield and up front. And like you touched on there, Louis, you know, we are shopping a different market. You know, clubs, your Silsdens and your Thacklers, your Nicholshills of this world look around Bradford, Leeds, Huddersfield. You know, we don't. We use Roy's knowledge of the local game, but we use Stuart Airdrie, our assistant manager's knowledge of the local game across the border, you know, with the amount of time he spent across the border with Barn Aldswick. And that's really proved pivotal as well. You know, we've got a good core of Lancashire lads, you know, in Catlow and Walney and Towney and lads like that, you know, who willingly travel from Burnley and even further afield. You know, the magic man in midfield, Mo, training twice a week, games, and yet he willingly drives from Bolton and back straight after work. So, yeah, I think we have to shop into a different market, and I think probably we will be looking to strengthen a little at the back. But, it's going to be a long season, so strength in depth isn't necessarily a bad thing, especially when you consider by the end of August, we'll have played 10 competitive games.
It's almost like you've kind of read what Roy said, and that's absolutely not the case. He put to me, like, playing all the games were in August will put a strain at everyone at this level. Still being a holiday season, putting additional stress on smaller squads. You've kind of hit the nail on the head there. It is a long season, but like any team in non-league, it's almost like that calendar's jam-packed right at the beginning, and if you get off to a poor start, you are playing catch-up. And how important is it for you guys at Steeton with, let's be honest, ambitions to push at the top to get off to a good start?
Massively important, because especially, as I touched on earlier, we're notoriously slow starters. The 2 seasons since COVID, the first season after COVID, I think it took us 8 games to win a game. Last season, I think it took us 7 or 8. So, we've got to get off to a good start, but we're under no illusions. In my opinion, the standard of the North West Counties is a class above the North East Counties. There's a lot of good footballers, because clubs at our level, or our side of the level, should we say, they can tap into those football mad markets in Liverpool and Manchester and East Lancashire. And I think it's important, as I've already touched upon, that we now start looking into those markets, and we are doing that. Lads from Burnley, Mo from Bolton, Congy's from Manchester. So it's important to get to a good start. And I'll be honest with you, if you look at the fixtures, I would argue that we have the toughest start in the league. We've got Darwin, the favourites for the division, Holker, losing playoff finalists, losing playoff semi-finalists the last 2 seasons, Ilkley, who on another day could have won that penalty shootout and be in the North East Counties Premier Division now. And you got like the likes of Route 1 coming in. Ashton Athletic have been relegated and have made no secret they're looking to go straight back up. So, if anything, I think the division's tougher than it was last season, which is a bit of a weird statement to make. But, everyone's getting better. And I think, if you're, other than probably tipping Darwin to win the title, you're a braver man than me to predict who's going to finish second through 18th and in what order.
And probably finally from me as well, even at this level, I think people who are watching this and listening, might think, non-league clubs are basically all about on the pitch, and, you turn up and you might pay the subs and stuff into play, but, it's very different from that now. And I think you guys at Steeton have as well expanded off the field as well, with Club Chevron as well, engaging fans. And the work that you've done with it's worth talking about as well, Josh. I think that's a big thing for especially non-league clubs as well, to kind of get in the community. And let's be honest, we're not, non-league is at this level is not getting a massive amount of crowd. We're not talking thousands, we're talking hundreds, and sometimes even at some clubs, double figures. And how important is it for clubs like yourselves at Steeton to make sure you are tapping into that, community in Keighley and beyond?
Very important. It's not exactly a secret. Keighley's a rugby league town, and I think I do believe over the last few years since Steeton came up to semi-pro, and Silsden, as well, they had a stint at Cougar Park, that we do tap into the local market. Keighley is a big town. I think it's the second biggest parish in the country, and there's lots of areas in and around Keighley that we can tap into, and I think we're doing a great job in doing that. It's worth talking about. As you mentioned, Lou's a cause very close to my heart. It's a charity I do a lot of work with outside of football. I think it's really testament to Roy and the club that they wanted to get on board. It's worth talking about, promote that message, and get involved and help spread the word, and tap into that market as well. Doing our warm-up tops now. Marley's become the home to their charity football team that I manage. And we're donating 2 free tickets for every home game to the charity to give to, whether it be the facilitators, the members, lads who play football team, just to get them out, get them to a game, and help them use football to improve and promote positive mental health.
Yeah, no, it sounds amazing, and like I say, it's a real testament to what you guys are doing. I think as well, you touched on earlier, being slightly probably a little bit nomadic, being at Steeton, having at Cougar Park. How important is it to have that base at Marley now? You've been there 1 or 2 seasons now. There's small improvements have been made. For those of us that are either listening or watching, some of us might be familiar with rocking up on a Marley on a Tuesday night and playing 5-a-side outside, and it's looking very different now, isn't it?
Yeah, it's completely different. I remember the reason the way, because I'm there every other Saturday, so it's kind of just the norm to me. But it really hit me the other week. Actually, we were hosting one of the It's Worth Talking About charity games, And there were lads, we have a couple of lads who used to live in Keighley, now don't live in the town, who came to play, and they were like, what's smart? Where did these stands come from? Where are these barriers from? There's a bar here, you know. So I think, you know, we've done great work as a club off the field to, you know, make Marley a home and make it our permanent base. You know, a lot of that, as well as obviously the hard work Roy and Stu and Pete do, a lot of that's down to, you know, the matchday operations team, Val, Matty, Ian, Jean, Sharon, Holly as well, for helping to contribute that and make it a positive game day experience for everyone.
How much scope is there kind of, you know, to kind of match with the ambition to kind of build on the good work that's been started around Marley? Just thinking of, you know, the simple uses of recycling, you know, shipping containers to make covers for shelf stands. How much scope is there kind of to do more? You know, if, for example, if you could get promoted in the next couple of years back, you know, upper league and keep trying to get as high as possible.
Yeah, you know, there is scope there. The council have been really supportive of like the work we do at Marley, and I think as well, you know, with having Route 1 Rovers in there as well now, it gives a lot more scope because, you know, there's 2 football teams there, 2 clubs who want to climb the pyramids and get higher. And I think, you know, as well, it's important that we have that kind of solid base. You know, we would love to play in our village, but unfortunately we can't. You know, Summerhill Lane, God bless it's kind of become the junior team's home and the training ground for the first team. But we've had to branch out because we had no other option. And, you know, I think there's a lot of scope for Marley. You know, it's in a good place for public transport because of the bypass and the train station. And, you know, I think as well, there's talks with the council, you know, there might be another AstroTurf pitch going in. They've already started work up on what's known as Tip Top, the top field above our ground, putting the rugby fields and the cricket pitches in. So there's a lot of scope and a lot of work. And I think with Bradford becoming City of Culture as well, I believe there's some funding going into Marley. So I think if us, the council and Route 1 can all work together and get things going, you know, we can make Marley a home, not just for us, but for everyone in the town.
Absolutely. And as I say, you know, Keighley's, it's always baffled me. Like I lived in Crosshills for the best part of the last 20 years. And it's always baffled me how Keighley has just never kind of grasped football really until these last couple of years when you are starting to see improvements in tendencies down at Steeton now.
Yeah, you know, like I said, Keighley's a rugby league town. There's never taken away from that. It always has been, probably always will be with the Cougars and the Albion. But I think, you know, a lot of people are getting into non-league football now. You know, we've averaged ton-plus crowds for the last couple of seasons. Silsden in themselves, even though they're back in the village, they're getting 200-300 crowds regularly. So I think people in and around Keighley are really beginning to believe and buy into non-league football. And I think it's also helped by the fact that Bradford City as well are doing their bit in our local community. You know, Bradford City's youth team during the winter when the pitches aren't too, they play their Wednesday lunchtime games at Marley. And, you know, I know they've used Silsden before as well. So I think the support of the pro clubs and the town is growing, and it can only be a good thing for Steeton, Silsden, Route 1 Rovers and the town as a whole that we don't just let, you know, with all due respect, the rugby league clubs dominate the landscape.
I'm going to hide my face here, and people might think I'm absolutely crazy, and you will obviously keep it clean, Josh, because I know what your answer might be for this one. Would you ever see a merger happening to increase possibility? I'm throwing it out there. Silsden, Steeton. Or am I just getting chucked off this now?
To be honest with you, Lou, you know, we argue about sharing the train station. So I think sharing a football club might just cause a war that even like Russia and Ukraine want to get involved in. So.
Before we let you go, Josh, just kind of want to touch on the rest of the sides from our region in the North West Counties Prem. And obviously, we've got Barlick, who are kind of borderline in terms of whether they're our region or not in the league above. You also got Shelley, Ilkley, Route 1 Rovers as well as yourselves in the Division 1 North. And kind of how do you see, obviously you touched on the fact that Darwin would be your strong favourites for the league, but how do you see the other sides doing? Oh, and obviously, talking about Route 1 Rovers, you were in as a new club to the pyramid a couple of years or so ago. How do you see them getting on as a Bradford side that's competing in that North West Counties league?
You know, from what I've seen, Route 1 have kept the vast majority of the squad that got promoted together, and that they were a good football inside. And I think Route 1 have actually recruited well. They've signed lads who know this division, lads who have played for us, who have played for Silsden. So I think if they can just stick to what they did last season, they'll be fine. Ilkley will be there and thereabouts again. They've recruited well from what I've seen in pre-season. Sam Dexter is a good manager and an even better bloke. And I think Ilkley, like I said, another day they win that penalty shootout against Chatterton, and who knows, they might beat St Helens in the playoff final, and they might be on the next party show in the North East Premier. So, clubs like Ilkley and Route One, I think with how late in the day it was for Shelley in terms of earning promotion, getting into the league, and they started their pre-season as well, I think they're probably looking at a good solid mid-table season, a bit of consolidation. But for us, Ilkley and Route One, I think we're all thinking playoffs, win the league. No, maybe not win the league, but playoffs, promotion push. And, I think Barlick will be fine in the Premier Division as well. I think I know they've dropped off a little bit towards the end of last season. We're looking over the shoulder, but I think they'll be just fine as well in the Prem. Good, I know the Prem's more or less a done deal with Bury, but I think Barlick will have a good, solid mid-table season. I think they won't have to have the same sort of relegation as they had last season.
Fingers crossed for good seasons really for all the sides across our region. Obviously, all the best to Steeton. Just finally as well, the first home game of the season for Steeton. When is it?
Next Tuesday night, Tuesday the 1st of August, 7:45 p.m. kick-off against Bacup. And, speaking from experience, Steeton Bacup games are always must-watch. There's always drama and controversy. So, if you're free next Tuesday and get yourself, obviously you're not watching your own local or the non-league club you do support there, get yourselves down to Marley and watch what's always a very good game of football between us and the Borough.
Excellent. Thanks for joining us, Josh. All the best for the opening day.
No worries.
Atherton, Levin and Rovers as well. And we'll speak to you over the course of the season.
Yeah, no worries, boys. Thank you for having me. See you in a bit.
Cheers, Josh. Thank you.
Cheers, mate. Bye.
So there we go. That's Josh Chapman from Steeton FC. And all in all, sounding really positive about this forthcoming season, Lou.
Yeah, I think it's going to be a really interesting season for Steeton because I think expectations are slightly different now, especially after having such a decent season last season. And also, let's be honest, what Ilkley have done last season, being so close to getting to that final. Steeton look a decent side. I've seen them, once, twice already pre-season, and are looking strong. And I think, like he said, they're looking relatively, clinical and ruthless up front, which is a massive for any team. But like I said, if we can almost get that defensive unit sorted, and Roy gets his men that he wants in the positions and are ready to go, then anybody will fear a team like Steeton because they are a club on the up. Let's not hide that fact. They've been coming through those leagues for the past 5-6 years, and now they find themselves at the highest point they've ever been, and they're not going to give up. I don't think without a bit of a say in things.
Yeah, absolutely. Just want to say a big thank you to Ryan Clark, who's a Barnsley fan, for tuning in and joining us on this non-league preview. Of course, there's plenty of sides around his neck of the woods in the Northern Counties East League in particular, which is what we'll turn our attention to. And this could take a while, Lewis, because there's a lot of them in West Yorkshire. 10, I think, was my last count of sides within the... And this is the complication, within the West Yorkshire County boundaries, because the FAs are a little bit strange sometimes, aren't they? It's fair to say.
The boundaries which you sometimes have come up with, Chris, while we've been preparing for this have been hilarious. But I can see what you've done. I can see your rationale. I can see your logic. I get it.
Okay.
I it's a long time since I did geography lessons, so let's see we touch upon this one. I mean, like I say, we've got Route 1 Rovers, Bradford-based team playing at Marley in North West Counties, and Sills in the North East Counties, Steeton in North West. But here we go.
Yeah, that's always baffled me since since Steeton came up and how the allegations have worked that the more westernly side of Silsden are in the east and the more easterly side of Steeton are in the west.
And Campion were in there the other year, and they're based in Manningham in Bradford, so it's anybody's guess where teams end up.
Yeah, absolutely. Turning our attentions then to the Northern Counties East League, and I'd say there's a lot of clubs across our region. So you've got Albion in the Premier Division, you've got Albion Sports, you've got Campion, Eccles Hill United, Emley, Garforth Town, Golka, Penistone Church, Silsden, and Thatley. I think that's all of them. I think that's all 10 in the Northern Counties East Premier Division. And then in Division 1 as well, there's a handful in there as well, in the form of Glassorton Welfare, of Horbury Town, Nottingham Miners Welfare, Wakefield FC, and of course Yorkshire Amateur as well. So there's a lot to go out there.
Yeah.
Where do you want to start, Lewis?
I think we just need to buckle up and go for it, don't we? Let's see what happens.
I mean, let's talk about the new boys then to the NCL Premier, and that is Campion, who, of course, as you touched on, are based at Manningham. They won Division 1 last season in pretty spectacular fashion overall.
Yeah, I think we're going to be a team who many people will fear. They have a very experienced, very settled squad. And with James Bicknell and Lee Ashford at the helm, I think we're going to surprise quite a few teams. Let's be honest, they pretty much walked that league last year. Harrogate Railway did push them relatively close. And I think that showed the success of Railway with the manager and, half a team, maybe 3/4 of a team moving to Taddy from now on.
Yeah, there's at least 9 of that Harrogate Railway side that have followed the gaffer to Tadcaster Albion.
Yeah. So, they got pushed to Campion, but if I'm being honest, I don't think they were in much of a threat to kind of lose that title. I think with a goal difference of over 100 shows of how good Campion were and how, again, I use the word ruthless, how ruthless they are. But I think what's really helped Campion as well is that they have some a real strong defensive unit and players who I believe are capable of going up another step. As well as that, they've got players like Nicky Boschel, who's been at the higher level. He's won the conference, he's won Northern Premier League before, played in the Conference North. So they've got that experience. For me, Campion are going to be, being honest, I think they'll be challenging. I think they'll be up there. I think the biggest challenge for them at the moment is, again, they're shopping in the same market as pretty much half the rest of the division. It's kind of convince certain players to join them rather than others.
When you look geographically, there's basically a Bradford derby every week. It feels like it, doesn't it? Because the simple facts are you've Bradford sides there, Albion Sports, Campion, Eccleshill. Obviously, Silston's just down the road, and we'll talk about them soon as well. They've had frankly, a hell of a summer from a recruitment perspective.
Yeah,
there's a lot of competition in and around just solely the Bradford region.
Yeah, and I think this is going to be a real challenge for a lot of teams because, for those who are watching who, might want to get into non-league and kind of follow it, hopefully this season, is that, it's not common really for a lot of teams to keep a stable squad from beginning to end of the season. You do see quite a lot of changes on the pitch, maybe managers as well. Once a manager goes, they all kind of go somewhere else. For instance, like we said earlier with Railway and Taddy, that's happened. But you look at Campion, which we're speaking about, and they've got a team which is extremely settled. They've got a very, very close-knit group. And I think once you start tweaking with that squad, you want to be really careful of the characters you bring in. I think James and Lee are very aware of the ability of that team. But it's more important it's kind of fit into that group because we've seen it, and especially last season, is that group is extremely strong. You've got experience like Daniel Illingworth, who's been at Silston, Sam Bradley being at Silston as well. And you've got Aidan Day, Aidan Kirby. Marcus Day's played at Harrogate Town, Harrogate Railway, and come back from a really serious injury. For me, on his day, Marcus Day is more than capable of playing a league higher. For me, Paddy Sykes stands out an absolute mile for him. How Paddy's not got to move to a higher club in a higher division is beyond me. It just seems to do exactly what the managers want him to do, but he's almost playing that number 10 role that he just floats in and out of the game, and he's just so important to how Campion work. So yeah, I think it's going to be really challenging. Bradford derbies every other week, possibly every 3 weeks, but I think we'll actually relish that. And for a lot of these clubs, it's actually who kind of finishes top of that Bradford table within that NCL, because there's a lot of competition and there's a lot of good teams. And I think, if I'm being honest, you probably look at about 4 or 5 of them teams who are capable of pushing for the top.
Yeah, absolutely. One side again, another Bradford side at Albion Sports. Now for them, they've had the last couple of years playing at Farsley Celtic, ground sharing it down at Throstle Nest. Sorry, the Citadel as it's officially known. But yeah, for them, I feel like the biggest change for them this season is going to be the surface they're playing on because, and again, slightly tongue-in-cheek, but the potato field of Farsley to the 3G, 4G pitch that now is perfectly flat and level at Bradford Park Avenue up at the Horsfall Stadium, it'll be quite the difference to play on for that squad. I'll say tongue-in-cheek, no offence, Farsley fans.
Well, if you've seen the pitch recently, it looks completely different, so they must have been listening to you. But yeah, I think Albion had a steady season last season, mid-table, quite a few changes behind the scenes. And I think you're absolutely right, that change to an artificial pitch is going to be really significant because, last season that Farsley pitch completely plays different to the surface at Horsfall. You're having to change the way you play, you set up your systems. It even goes down to the absolute basics of passing a ball to somebody. It will run on that surface, and probably sometimes in the mud at Farsley in years gone by, it doesn't run very far. It just stops. And I think, to be fair, and I think the way Albion is set up, they are a very athletic team. For me, standout is Jarrow Parchment. He's a decent player on his day, and he can burn a lot of defenders on that right wing. And having seen him a lot in the past 2 years, he's kind of taking on that leadership role of being that go-to person up top. Last year, they had Tabisha Hussain, who's gone to Garforth, and Jarrow's kind of out seeing that bit of a challenge, and that's testament to him. So, 2 new people coming in off field as well, with Neil Simpson, Craig Ollie, who used to be at Yorkshire Amateurs, and Taddy, helping Rizwan as well in the dugout. So, they are slowly going about the business at Albion. And, I think, again, lost 1 in 6 friendlies. They've been relatively strong in pre-season. We watched them at the Horsfall against Wakefield, and despite a close, relatively 20 minutes, Albion pretty much walked that friendly in the end, which shows, again, the gap that might be between the Premier at the moment and Division 1. So I expect Albion, to probably finish roundabouts where they are. I think, if I'm being honest, they'll be looking to hopefully improve on that. Again, it depends on how they get used to that surface, and they need to get used to it pretty quick.
Yeah, and they start the season on Friday night away at the side that we touched on a second or two a few months ago in Silsden. Now, I mean, I don't want to lump the pressure on Matt Kavanagh's side, but purely on recruitment alone, I will be staggered if they are not up there towards the top end of the season come the end of it, simply because you're talking Adam Clayton coming in from Farsley, the experience he brings. You got Ross Daly, the centre mid, who has been there, done it at most of the kind of non-league clubs across our region, including Guiseley most recently, Bradford Park Avenue in the past. And then the small matter of one Cale Price, who has knocked up, by our rough reckoning, at least 60 goals in the past 2 seasons that he's had. Obviously, at Steeton in the league below it, or in the North West Counties, and at Galkey United last season, we got 25 in the league, 5 in the cups to notch up 30. For them to bring him to Silsden is, frankly, remarkable, because that is a player that we know clubs far higher up the regional pyramid have been looking at.
Yeah, and that could quite easily be, if it works out, the signing of the season across our region. Cale Price is a player who, with the greatest respect for the NCL Premier, is a higher level, if not 2, possibly above that. And I think the impressive thing about Price is that not only is he absolutely clinical in front of goal, you give him a sniff, he finds a bottom corner, is that he also links play up extremely well. We saw an example of that just only, a couple of nights ago when we watched Silsden against Harrogate Railway. He's not a 6'4" target man. He's relatively kind of,
he's what are you, 5'8", 5'9"?
5'8", 5'9", but he was strong. He's able to ping the passes out to the wing, because he knows that the players are just going to put the ball in the box for him, because that's the best place for him to be. I think that's a very, very shrewd signing from Silsden, and I think we'll do very, very well to keep him if he scores goals. Again, at the moment, referring back to that friendly, he's getting the odd touch and it just finds the back of the net. Whatever at the moment he's touching, he's turning to goals. So for Silsden, we are lumping the pressure on him, because they absolutely should be up there. If you're signing likes of Adam Clayton, Ross Daly, Kyle Trenery in goal, Tariq Fishley from North Ferriby, you still got Maltby in the midfield as well. Lewis Gardner's back as well from his time at Guiseley.
Alex Hudson, of course, who's still out with injury, but when he comes back, was a cracking little winger on his day as well.
Player is Ellis, yeah. You've also got Jack Normanton, who knows the level really well from Fackley. So let's be honest, if Silsden are not in that top 3 or 4, that is quite a disappointing season based on who they've signed, because if they're going for it, and fair play to them, if they keep them players fit, they should absolutely be challenging, because we know, like I say, players are more than capable of playing a higher level above. But it will be interesting. They've got to gel. They've got to do it quickly. And again, like we've mentioned earlier, it does sound a cliche, but you're playing against teams very local to you who are going to be out to get the scalp of Silsden, because that's the teams that people are looking at to beat. And that's quite a big bounty on the head to play. And that, teams are going to go there and almost put them in the bracket as, kind of, making it relevant to a Premier League, a Man City, a Man United, Liverpool. It's, the stature's obviously completely different, but we've got that kind of aura about the moment where they've got players who, could easily in the National League North. Yeah.
Yeah. And this thing, interesting, of course, so you touched on the fact that it's about keeping them fit. Now, obviously, when we saw them play on Tuesday night, Clayton out injured, Ross Daly currently out with injury, Casey Stewart out with injury, Hudson all out with injury. And with the fact that they start tomorrow night on the Friday night is the season opener, that fixture's probably going to come too soon for all of those players, really, on the face of it. But we did see them put in a decent enough performance with, taking out those key names, shall we say, a performance that still got that win over Harrogate Railway on Tuesday night.
Yeah, they've got strength in depth. Last season they finished mid-table, and that was quite a.
It drops away a bit, didn't it?
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. They kind of fade a little bit towards the end. They started the season really well under Kavanagh. Obviously they went, a different direction after having Danny Forrest there, and kind of rebuilt the squad as like Alex Laird, at the back as well. So, the last season was pretty much a consolidation season, which is absolutely fair enough. This season is completely different. They've got to go for it because of the signings that they've made. But like you say, at the moment, that beginning of the season is coming quite early for a lot of those new signings. So Albion are probably catching Silsden at the right time, because let's be honest, they're not going to have any league momentum, any form behind them at Silsden. They're still getting some players back, fitting into the system. Albion have pretty much kept a very similar squad. And again, with likes of Robbie Fox up front, that is always a threat. So it's going to be a real challenging one. And, as well, I think we're hoping for a big crowd Friday night under the lights to get the season underway. It's a great idea from the league. I'm really pleased that both Silsden and Albion have decided to, go ahead and go for that Friday night game. They're making season ticket holders of local clubs are going for half price. So for adults, that's £3. I believe they're putting barbecue, sweet stalls. Clubhouse has got Sky Sports on. There's mascots there. They are wanting to make an occasion of this. So it's really good to see. And if people are entertained on the pitch from what they see at Silsden, again, like Steeton, dare we say, well, Chappers is not here. Silsden has got a scope to improve and expand and become actually, quite a force to be reckoned with in a local area.
Yeah, very much so. I mean, we touched on the fact that obviously it's been a little while since we've been to Steeton. Certainly in my case, I hadn't realised just how much building work there was going on. New housing estates popping up around the outskirts of Silsden, in particular, right next to the club as well. So there's a real scope going forward in the future to kind of try and really improve on that fan base and get more people through the turnstiles on a regular basis down there.
And it's good to see, they are in a village, lovely village it is, but there's not been many houses in there. But now they're expanding around there. We remember playing there as youngsters, around at Silsden, and it was a beautiful pitch, but there wasn't much around it. And now you look around it, and it's kind of surrounded by houses, which, like you said, is a good catchment area now for the club. So they do have to tap into that because they need more fans if they're going to sustain a push to go up the leagues and carry on signing the players that they have. They're going to need to keep the money and the cash flow going somehow, and hopefully that does work because it's always been a good club as Silsden, but it will be interesting to see how they go on this season because probably like I said about Steeton, the expectations at Silsden have probably gone from mid-table consolidation to right up there now where they are expecting to challenge, and if they're not challenging, people will be sniffing around those players to take them away from them.
Yeah, absolutely. Turning our attentions then to more of the sides across the NCL and to Eccles Hill. Obviously, Lee Elam back, or is back in charge at Eccles Hill United, and he's been there before, hasn't he, Lou?
He has, and I think for Lee, he'll want to go one better. They just missed out on promotion last time. Obviously, with the playoff system, how it works, we had to go down south to play the game, which is a completely different debate in itself and another show. But we had again, Lee had built a good squad there. Obviously, he left. Ryan Towson came in, and that's been a rebuild, and did extremely well in the FA Vars. Did really, really well and got incredibly far, probably the furthest Eccles will have ever been. But that's again another change pre-season. Tully's left, Lee's come back, and it's another rebuild for Eccles Hill. So I see it as quite a consolidation season. I think they're probably gonna. They've had a look at, I'm guessing, a load of trialists, not seeing many squad lists from games. So it is a little bit quiet of actually seeing who will play and who turns up at Eccles Hill. They are starting to announce a few signings, but a bit of an unknown quantity at the moment. Obviously, Lee and the team will know exactly what his team are capable of come day one for the rest of the season. But I imagine they'll be happy. Well, they'll want to improve on where they finished last season in 15th, which is wasn't good enough from where they were the season before. They'll want to be kind of pushing, for me, the likes of Campion and probably Albion and Golkey. It's that kind of region where I think they want to kind of be towards the end of this season.
Yeah, and for the pre-season that they've had there, mixed bag of results. Most recently, obviously, the beat Geisy's academy side. They lost the last Saturday on 22nd against Harrogate Railway. Did beat Bradford City's under-18s in midweek, and obviously they start on Saturday away at Bottisford Town. So, starting away from home, not necessarily an easy place to go either in Bottisford.
No, it isn't. It's never an easy place to go. But I think it's when Eccles Hill will be actually, probably looking forward to now, having a rebuild, having a completely different squad coming in, with Lee coming back into kind of familiar surroundings and probably just getting to grips with that squad. There'll be a few left over from his previous time that he can hopefully count on. And Lee's been in the game long enough that he's got his contacts. Lee's very well known around this area to pick up local talent. So I expect Eccles Hill to probably be a little bit up and down. It could be a bit of a roller coaster for him, but if they get off to a decent start at Bottisford and just carry on a little bit of momentum, then you kind of are knocking on a door of likes of Golkey and Campion, which is, like I said earlier, I think that's where they need to be.
And moving on then to Emily, I'm just going to work down this alphabetically. I think now is my easiest option, Lewis. And for Emily, the one name that always strikes me in their squad is, of course, one rather experienced striker now in James Walshaw, signed on for another season.
Just about, hasn't he? He keeps on going, does Wally? He's infamous around this local area, isn't he? We talk about poachers with Cale Price. Cale Price does remind me a little bit of a Wally back in the day. Links up play well, scores a goal, and you know what you're going to get from Wally. He's a character. He brings the dressing room together, and you can always count him for something in the penalty box, whether that's a goal, a penalty, whatever that looks like. Wally will somehow get, usually gets his own way. I think Emily had an outstanding season last season. They've got a lot of experience. You've got likes of Niall Heaton, you've got James Knowles, you've got James Walshaw in there. And I've noticed we've got Cowgill as well. So they've recruited quite locally again from, teams and players who've played likes of Brighouse and Ossett with Tom Higgs. So I think Emily will do very well again. They've been boosted by the fact they won, albeit the Sheffield and Hallam Senior Cup. That was a big win for them. And it was actually, it was a result at the end of a decent season. Were they going to push for likes of North Ferriby? Probably not. But they weren't that far behind. So I expect Emily to give it another good push. I see them similar to where they ended up last season, and I think the only way that will depend on where they finish is, can they keep that experience and can those players stay fit and play week in, week out? Because they are unfortunately not getting any younger. But that in that league, if you've got the likes of Knowles and Wally to count on, you will be steady. And the leaders at the end of the day, this division and non-league, especially around our area, needs leaders and experience. And those two have it in absolute abundance.
moving on then to Frickley, and a side that this was one of the clubs that we looked geographically and thought, is this really West Yorkshire? But it is. Not a club that I know a great deal about, to be honest. Certainly one that I suspect you'll know more about, though, given Pat Maguire, the man in charge at Frickley, is, of course, the kind of head of the youth, isn't he, at Breath Park Avenue?
Yeah, he is Pat. Again, another person in the local area who's got good contacts. Whether that's been at his time at Fackley, where he was very successful. He kind of built Fackley up and had a really good reputation there. And obviously moved away from Fackley to kind of concentrate on the academy. Most recently joined at Frickley. Frickley's it's a staple in non-league in our region, isn't it? And I think with Pat there, with Blake there as well, they'll be wanting for a much better season than what they had last season. I think when Pat joined and the way it finished at 17th, didn't go where they wanted. And again, it's a bit of a difficult market where they're shopping, because like you say, they are right on the edge of that West Riding. So, it's going to be, I think it'll be a challenge. But I think what Pat, again, has is then contacts, like I say, whether he wants to count on some of the Avenue Academy. I know he did that last year. He got a few in there to help him out. So it gets them, real good game experience and experience in this league, whether they stay at Avenue or whether they move elsewhere. Example at State, and Josh Coe, for example, at Avenue Academy as a striker, 6'4", had an option to stay at Avenue. He signed at Silsden, so there was an option there for manoeuvrability. I've seen Pat make quite a few signings, and he will be absolutely on them lads to get the best out of them. I think they'll finish higher than what they did last season, but I think we're looking at teams in the local area, again, the likes of Golka and Campion, and you can even throw Emily in there. I see Frickley probably finishing mid-table, I think.
Yeah, and Frickley on the opening day on Saturday, hosting Campion, who we've already touched on. So that could be quite the quite the contest, to be fair, between the two. Carrying on, where am I in the alphabet? From F to G, and Garforth Town, and we touched on the fact that Debussy Hussein, obviously a name that we know very well over the years, especially from my perspective when I remember seeing the guys at the academy a few years ago. Obviously had a decent enough season with Albion last year, but has gone on to Garforth Town. And for Garforth, they've kind of just always been plugging there or thereabouts, haven't they? Kind of never quite challenging the title, but never in any real danger of the drop. And they've had some decent scorers over the years. I'm just thinking James Burgess a couple of seasons or so ago was banging them in for fun.
Yeah, again, another team who probably exceeded expectations a little bit last season, finishing fourth, just behind Emily. And they've carried on that form into pre-season, won 5, lost 1. So, people are going to be probably looking at likes of Garforth. And again, their catchment area of Leeds, it's a really good, strong hotbed of team, players that they can count upon. First game at home to Hallam, which will be a challenge, but probably one that I think Garth will be looking at to win. I think the biggest, for me, it will be interesting to see have a cut without Charlie Marshall, because he's gone to Scarborough, signed for Scarborough Athletic now. Charlie Marshall is probably one of the better players in that league, and it goes to show that having trialled right from the beginning at Scarborough, having kept eye on him, he's earned himself a deal in the National League North, and that shows how good he is. Like Sir Jonathan Greening can, count on him, but not only, give him a go and score a few goals, but actually give himself a contract. So have a cut without him will be really interesting. I mentioned earlier, you've got Toolstation Hussein, who's been around the local area a fair bit with Guiseley, with Avenue, with Ossett. So he'll be looking to probably carry on a bit of momentum I had at Albion Sports. He always seemed to do well, and with Tabby, he's always got a goal in his locker that will come out of absolutely nowhere. He has got magic feet sometimes, and he's got to probably settle down now, play for the full season, hopefully a couple of seasons somewhere, and just establish him at this level, because he's good enough. But whether he's capable of filling the boots of Charlie Marshall is going to be a really interesting one. So I think, Garforth will be absolutely looking to stay where they were last season. But I think they've got a few more teams around them that are going to challenge them and probably challenge them a bit more than what they were used to last season.
Yeah, I mean, we touched on, obviously, Kyle Price and his form in pre-season, especially with Silson coming into it. To be fair to Garforth, in Matthew Ancliffe, they've got a lad who's got 9 so far in pre-season. So he's certainly looks to be hitting the ground running when the season starts, as we say. for them at home to Hallen on Saturday. On to Golker United then. And obviously, a Huddersfield-based side who have had some great success over the last few years. Obviously, after coming into what would have been at the time the North West Counties division, they came in at the same level as Steeton, got promoted out of that, swapped over to the East, and took to it pretty well. Of course, Kyle Price was there last season, got 30 goals in all competitions. They've lost him, but they're still getting the crowds. They've got the fan base, they've got the backing of Huddersfield on the whole behind them.
Yeah. You took the words out of my mouth. Another club that are on the up, the likes of Steeton, Campion, and you can throw Golker into that same bracket. I know a few people go watch them, and Golker are attracting crowds of up to 400-500 fans, and basically it was almost like a village team only a few years ago, and they're really rising through the pyramid. How they'll get on without Cale Price is an absolute $1 million question. It will be interesting how they go, but they have kept a few players as well, like Daniel Nadoli as well, who's been there from previous years. He's been at Brighouse, and he's always been
at some point, wasn't he? Going back for probably 10 years or so ago, wasn't he, Daniel Nadoli?
Yeah, he's a threat, isn't he? He's still there, and he's well liked there, and a lot of people still rate Daniel quite well to potentially stay at this level, maybe move up a little bit higher. So they've had a really strong preseason. Again, 1-5, lost 1, and I think sometimes I'm not saying that they wanted to lose Cale Price, because they probably absolutely didn't want to lose that goal threat up front, but sometimes you can hang your hat on one player, maybe a little bit too much. For him to finish 9th in the highest finish ever is remarkable. Can they do the same without Price? And maybe if they lose their target man, the talisman, they're going to have to share out the goals a little bit more. And sometimes it can actually work in your favour, because it might actually just switch things up a bit and mix things to probably not what you've been used to, and gives you a little bit of different identity. But yeah, that's the $1 million question. Can they cope without Cale Price? And I'm looking at Golker, and I'm seeing a steady season. Do I think we'll finish 9th? I don't think so. I think we'll probably finish a few places below, but they'll be absolutely fine in this league.
Yeah, and their opponents on Saturday are the next side for us to kind of touch on. That's Penistone Church, and again, a side of I'm thinking, did they not go up the league a few years ago and then came up down? I think they did quite well. Obviously, I think Sam Scriven's on the books a couple of seasons ago. He obviously got goals and then got moved to guys who didn't work out for him. But certainly a club that have been at a higher level and will always be looking to be kind of there or thereabouts at the Northern Counties East Prem.
Yeah, they've always been knocking on the door, haven't they, Penistone? I remember as well the likes of Nathan Kiley up front, who used to bang goals in for fun. He was almost a bit of another Cale Price. You'd expect him 20-25 goals out of him each season. So for Penistone to challenge again, they do need that goal threat and goals to be shared about. But again, sounding like a broken record, there's a lot of teams shopping around in that area, and I think Penistone will do well to finish in the top 8, 9, 10. Capable of doing it, but there's some real incredible competition happening this year. And the only benefit, I think, for a lot of teams in this league, there isn't a North Ferriby in this league that you were expecting to win it. It's going to be very, very tight, and we're not just saying it because we're talking about it, but I've said it in previous shows that we've done on this platform that I think the NCL is absolutely the division to watch for this season. It's too tight to call. Can I pick a winner at the moment? I absolutely can't, and I'm not just saying it. It could be one of 6 or 7 teams. That's how good this division is.
Yeah, there's a lot of possible candidates. The final kind of final side in the Northern Counties East Premier Division for us to touch on is Thackley. Now, I feel like I might have been a bit of a bad luck charm for Thackley pre-season. I've seen 3 of their games in pre-season, and across those 3 games, they've conceded 13 goals. Obviously, we saw their first pre-season, I think it was, against Steeton, which is the first one that we've seen. I've seen them since against Prefer Park Avenue and against Guiseley. And look, there's defensively, from what we've seen in pre-season, certainly think things perhaps certainly need to improve. But obviously, they did pick up a good win when we weren't there, Lewis, against Which Fix the other day.
Yeah, it's what's going in Fackley's favour is that they've got a lot of experience in that team and players who are very close with each other, good friends who have been there and done it, worn a t-shirt and got promotion in the past. Do I think Fack will get promoted? No. Do I think they'll have a season where, again, it might feel a little bit up and down? At times, maybe at times looking over the shoulder, I do. With somebody like Tom Greaves, who just absolutely knows where the back of the net is, despite, now playing at Fackley. He's done it at Avenue, he's done it at FC United, he's done it at Bury. Wherever Greasy goes and offs it, he scores goals. Aidan Chippendale as well. Chippy's got magic on his left boot sometimes, Matt he can do. Matt Dempsey's been there as well. So, from Fackley's perspective, I think they are going to, they'll probably finish similar to where they were last season. But it will be a test. I think that first game against Tadcaster, I think, could be a real indicator to see how far they are, because Tadcaster have, like we said earlier, you've got a lot of Harrogate Railway players in. Harrogate Railway, almost have kind of not the B team, but kind of mini got promoted with Taddy now. Taddy being relegated, so it's going to be a really interesting challenge. I think it's going to be like for like. I think Fackley at home against Taddy is one to watch out for and see where those teams are.
The one thing I will say for that opening day fixture is in Tadcaster, they're not exactly a side in form. They haven't won any of their pre-season games.
Yeah.
So it was perhaps a time to be facing Tadcaster with all the changes they've had in the summer. This could be it for Fackley.
Yeah, I think, and that's probably why I'm saying it, is because Taddy are really, they've completely rebuilt, new management, new players, new squad. Whereas Fackley have, we know we've spoken to Greaves, during pre-season. We have been finding it a little bit tough to get some of the targets. They have been playing trialists. Trialists, as much as they can be beneficial, can also, let's be honest, be a little bit of an hindrance during your season, especially with it now starting so early at 20. We're talking the 28th of July. The season starts 29th for a lot of these teams now. Trialists are doing their best to win a contract, but you can't keep them on forever. You've got to get your squad settled. So sometimes, these clubs are probably getting, let's be honest, maybe 2 weeks, 3 weeks most at looking at these trialists. These clubs might train once or twice a week. And even then it's holiday season, people are away on, vacations, or whether they're working or whatever that looks like. So some players, may have not even seen some of the trialists they've worked with until they just rock up on a Saturday or a Tuesday night to play a friendly. It's incredibly difficult. So I think you can completely empathise with the likes of Greavesy, and he's back in management after a stint at FC United. So even though he's playing it, it's that real difficult role of balancing it. Does he play one game? Does he go on the dugout one game, or is he mixing it between both? And Chippy's leading it as well, and he's on the pitch. So it's a real conundrum of how that squad and how that fits out throughout the whole season.
Having someone like Danny Forrest as well, though, in the dugout as well when Greaves is on the pitch will probably be a big positive for them.
Massive. Foz knows this area like the back of his hand, doesn't he? Foz, again, has got contacts. He, let's be honest, Foz could probably still put on a pair of boots and give it a go if it was absolutely needed as well. Even you might not like me for saying that, but it helps, I think, when you've got somebody in a dugout like Foz who will be probably a permanent fixture on there. I think if you didn't have somebody like him that you could fall back on and trust and lean on while you're doing a business on the pitch, is a big thing. Greaves is all about goals. He's a super squad player. He's a super bloke himself, but Greaves is all about scoring goals. There's absolutely no shirking that. And for Danny Forrest, I think on a dugout, he's got to, like we've said earlier, he's got to get that balance right at the back, because they've got the threat up front. We've seen it, that they've got creativity up front. It's making sure that they're not leaking goals at the back, because in any division, not just non-league, if you're leaking goals like they have done in them 3 friendlies you've mentioned, it's going to be a long season.
Yeah, absolutely. Fingers crossed for them and to all our sides in the Premier Division of the Northern Counties East League. So just want to kind of just quickly round up really in the next 5 minutes or so and finish up. So we'll just touch on the sides then. The Northern Counties East League Division 1. So the sides for our region there: Glassharton Welfare, Horbury Town, Nostell Miners Welfare, Wakefield AFC, and Yorkshire Amateur. And we'll start with Yorkshire Amateur. We'll work backwards on the alphabet with this one. Yorkshire Amateur, of course, had pretty torrid time last season and were relegated.
Yeah, it was a season that we won't want to remember. A lot of change, so much change happening there. Now they've got the management team set in from probably about last January, I believe. They stuck around. And ironically, just before we got on air, we're watching some of the YouTube interviews that they've posted recently. They've had, again, a lot of trialists from, again, what I believe and what they've said. I haven't seen them myself at the moment, but, they've had trialists who said who are completely at this level, who are absolutely good enough. I mean, again, we've got trialists who, they've had to discard because they're not good enough at that level. And I think that's, at the moment, that's where Hammers are in. We remember, 5, 6, 7 years ago, Hammers were one of the
They were good in a big way.
They were absolutely one of the teams that you looked out for. Let's be honest, they're almost like what Silsden are now. And I think that's, the comparisons are, are pretty valid for that. For Hammers, they'll just want to stop the slide. I think it's as simple as that. I think a season of consolidation will be absolutely happy with. I can't really comment because I've not seen them at all at the moment to even comment in the squad that they've put out, but they'll want to just be steady. And I think if crazy it sounds, if they have a boring season and finish mid-table, they will absolutely take that and hopefully build from the back, from back to top, really.
Yeah, so I'm kind of setting the foundations in place for them into this season, really, just to kind of start to right the wrongs of last season in particular. Onwards then to Wakefield, and this for me is one of the most potentially exciting projects across our region this season, across all the levels.
Yeah.
The fact that Wakefield as a football club are now back in Wakefield as well. The ground sharing, of course, at Bellevue, which is, let's be honest, if you're a rugby league fan and if you're not a Wakey fan, might not necessarily be your favourite rugby league ground to go to. But in non-league circles, it is quite the stadium to play, the Northern Counties East League football in. And for Wakefield as a club, they've got the social media. They seem to be getting it right. They're doing a lot of things in terms of trying to engage with the community. They've got a good-looking squad together as well that's putting some good performances in pre-season without having necessarily what you would class as, your star names, perhaps, or with the exception of the experienced Ash Flynn.
Yeah.
But just as a project, Wakefield, again, when we were talking to Chappers earlier about Keighley being a rugby league town and how football's always kind of struggled in Keighley.
Yeah.
Again, always baffled me. I'm sure, and I might be wrong on this, but I'm sure a few years ago, I heard some form of stat that Wakefield was the largest city in the country without something like a top 6 tier football club.
Yeah, I echo everything you say. I think it's one that a lot of people will be looking probably the side of their eyes on, because I think this could be a really exciting one for them. Obviously, they got back up going quite a number of years ago. Have they really pushed on probably what they hoped? Probably not. I think we probably expected to be a little bit higher than what they are now. But, they've now got a base at Bellevue, having, working myself, and, they're building a really impressive new stand as well, main stand that's got corporate hospitality, brings probably Bellevue into the 21st century a bit more. And I think what's more encouraging is from what, even when we've seen them already this pre-season, especially at home, just in friendlies alone, they're getting 400-500, which is really significant. Let's be honest, Avenue played Charlie the other night and we're getting 100 fans, 200 tops. This is Wakefield, who are playing 3 divisions, 4 divisions below and attracting double the amount that are turning through the turnstiles. It's going to be one that I don't think it's going to be a quick burner. I think it's one that we'll want to build and do right, and I hope they do. I would hope, and I think definitely the club will hope as well, that Wakefield could be into that, NCL Premier probably in the next 3 seasons. Are they capable of doing it? Yes. With something like Ash Flynn, who just, again, is an absolute poacher. That's what he's there to do. Put the ball on back of the net. He scored, he's scoring 20, 30, 40 goals a season in years gone by. So there's absolutely no risk with that signing at all. And one thing that will go in Wakefield's favour, probably more than any team in this division, is they'll have that cash flow coming in through the turnstile. There's not many teams that will be getting 400-500 in friendlies. So what will it be like for the league? Will they probably get 550-600? You're probably expecting something along them lines. and working myself, people are talking about it. They are talking about this football club that's kind of coming back, rebranded. They've got new kit deal, got a lovely new kit. Even they just seem to be doing things very slowly, but doing it right. And I think it's one that we will keep an eye on here for sure. And I think it's one that I think teams in the local area will be looking at, going, just let's see what Wakey are doing. I would say, having watched them at the beginning of last season, I watched them against Campion. There were a lot of young kids, but tried to play football the right way. Absolutely no doubt about that. They were impressive despite losing. I think it was 3-0 to Campion. We've watched them in pre-season. Again, they do seem quite a young team, but did try to play football again on the floor from the back to the front in quite a measured and structured way. So I expect Wakefield to be kind of knocking on a door a little bit, and they're not going to have a challenge of maybe possibly like Harrogate Railway, who pushed Campion relatively close because of the squad that's been decimated and they've had to rebuild again. For somebody like Wakefield, they'll probably be looking at this season saying, how close can we get to promotion? If we can at all, how close can we get? And I don't think they'll be far off at all.
No, it's certainly going to be a really interesting project to watch is Wakefield AFC. Not too far down the road, just outside of Wakey, brings us to our next side in Nostell Miners Welfare, and just your traditional little kind of, quintessential non-league club for the level, really, Nostell. I remember many years ago when I was a student at the time on my sports journalism course, I think I ended up doing a match report for Farsi Celtic versus Nostell Miners Welfare at Throstle Nest, and that was back in like 2010, I think, when Farsley were on their way back up after the, oblivion they faced a year or two previously. For Nostell, it's hard to say kind of what the hope and expectations are really for Nostell, because it's not a big place. It's not a well-known name in general non-league terms, but synonymous really with the region.
Yeah, and they've had a mixed bag, haven't they, with friendlies as well. Having the first trip to Isle of Man, what a friendly. I mean, organising that's an absolute winner. But then you look at it, dread against Silsden, we talked about their expectations there, good result. But then they go lose 4-0 at Golka, they lose at Ilkley, but then they go and beat, an 11 against Worksop, but then get thrashed at Retford. So they are going to be up and down. Finished 12th last season in NCL 1. I think they'll be relatively happy to consolidate that season again. But how far can Nostell go? And I think this is the biggest thing. You say, you look down the road at Wakefield, they've got, some quite noisy neighbours, as the old football term goes, doesn't it? And even though they might be having a bit of a jealous eye across that, there's not much. It's difficult to compete with a beast like that at the moment. So I think Nostell, again, like I say, if they finish around 12th, 13th, 14th, I think they'll be relatively happy with that one. Also,
kind of in the area just across the M1 from Wakefield brings us to Horbury Town again, another side that are steady. I remember them from last season, mainly for I think they were knocked Guiseley out of the County Cup on a decent run in that competition.
Yeah, and that's probably the highlight of the season. But they finished 6th. I think that again the highest in their recent history as well, which was really significant. So they had a good season. I think what would have disappointed Horbury is that they were very, very close in the first quarter of the season to Campion. At one point, I remember Campion played Horbury at home, and it was almost people were thinking it could be the title decider. But Horbury, quickly faded away after that and kind of dropped down quite a few places and just didn't keep that momentum going. Still relatively new club in this division. Again, competing with the likes of Nostell. They're going to be competing with the likes of Wakefield. With Rossington Main going up as well. There's a path for these teams to get into that NCL Premier again. So it will be really interesting. I think Selby will be kind of, knocking on the door as well. Armthorpe just round the corner from us as well. So the likes of Horbury, probably batted above their average a little bit last season from what people may have thought. It's how consistent can they be this season and the season after and the season after that. Is they've got that infrastructure, they've got the budget, they've got the quality in players, the strength in depth to maintain that challenge. And I think, the likes of Campion have probably set a mark of some of these teams to show how it's done. Getting players in towards the end of the season that just sees them over the line. The likes of Kyle Chenery and Ashley Flynn. They didn't play every game, but they were there complementing the squad because they know what it takes to get out of this league. And that's that's going to be the goal for the likes of Nossel and Horbury and Wakefield. That that path has probably opened up a little bit more. Again, it's going to be quite a fight to get promoted because it's never an easy division to get out of. To not only become top of the table and win it outright, but then that playoff is a real challenge to get out of.
Last, but by certainly no means least, the last of the sides in the Northern Counties East Division 1 at Glasshouse and Welfare. Obviously, Castleford sort of base, so again, just up the road really from Wakey and Ponty and the like. And again, a side that, if things fall into place, you could see having a good season. If not, mid-table would probably suffice.
I think you're probably right. We'll definitely want to get away from the trouble that we were in last season, finishing 17th, did struggle a lot at the beginning of the season. Pre-season, 1-3, drawn 2, lost 1-3, lost 2, drawn 1. First game against Affersley, who finished bottom last season. Yeah. So on paper, they'd want to get off to a really good start against Afferston. Affersley, not Afferston, Affersley. But I think, for Welfare's perspective, they'll just, again, hopefully, like you say, a bit of a consolidation season. And they probably should just be about safe. Again, it depends how that season goes and recruitment throughout, because once you become stuck at the bottom end of that division, we know from seasons gone by, it's very difficult to get out of because, players will probably move somewhere else. We can probably see the direction that club might be going in. And sometimes we've seen teams be absolutely stranded at the bottom of that league with, minus 100 odd goal difference with very, very few points, sometimes single figure points. Because that's the nature of the beast of how it works. That's football, and players will move to other clubs, and around this local area, there's enough clubs to go at, which we've gone through.
Yeah, we are at the end of that list, thankfully, with all the sides. It's certainly shaping up for some interesting games early on. A lot of our sides as well got their first home games next Tuesday night on the 1st of August. There's a whole host of sides across our region. Best bet for finding out where your local side is check out the Northern Counties East League website, which I have to say is excellent in terms of being up to date with all the stats and goal scorers and all the information about the clubs. And of course, the Northwest Counties Football League site as well. Does a sterling job for the sides in that half of the region, really. But Lewis, obviously, we've talked about the leagues in detail now, and the standouts for me, obviously, I've got to say Silsden for me in the Northern Counties East League Prem, the side to watch for them, and Wakey in the league below.
Yeah, I think you're right. It all depends. Can Silsden keep those players until the end of the season, keep them fit? If they do, they're absolutely up there. There should be no doubt about that. I think the also really interesting ones for me, can Emily and Garth keep up that momentum of last season, and how well do Campion go after pretty much storming that league last season? It's that's a real standout for me in that league. Wakefield's a really interesting prospect in that league, and I think there is, again, expectation on them to really push for the top. But like we mentioned earlier, it's how the likes of Railway fit into that. We watched them the other night, and they've got a team of 17, 18, 19-year-olds. In that league, there's not many teams who have a squad that young. It can work in your favour, it can work against you, but there's a lot of experience, and there's teams coming up who, I'll be absolutely honest on this show, I don't know much about. Clearcross Town, Louth Town, I don't really know much about them, but this is a fascinating thing about non-league. If you go out there, watch them, there's absolute gems out there that you'll go, actually, they're not a bad team. I remember watching Horbury Town last year. They surprised me. I'd never seen Horbury Town before. And all of a sudden they're pushing in the top 3. So it's going to be a real interesting one. I've said it before, and I'll absolutely say it again. This is division for me to watch, especially the Northern Counties East Premier. It's interesting in Chappers think that the Northwest Counties is a stronger division. Campion will probably say something similar after how they struggled in that league only a few years ago. Whether it's as tasty, whether it's going to be as interesting between the West Yorkshire region, I will say that the North East Counties is going to be one that I will be attending a lot through midweeks and possibly at weekends, because there's going to be a lot of stories and headlines, I think, out of this one.
Yeah, absolutely. I know we'll be discussing in due course, I think, where we're going to try to get to next Tuesday night for that. What will be the second league game for a lot of the Northern Counties, East and West side. So, yeah, it'll be fascinating to do so. Big thank you to those that have watched, or if you're watching on catch up, don't forget to send us any comments and messages, either on YouTube comments or via Twitter. At WYorks Football is the way to get in touch on Twitter. Oh, sorry, what's it called now? Is it X? Elon's renamed it? I don't know. I'm sticking with Twitter. Twitter.com still takes to the same place. That's the key thing. And also, our fantasy football for Premier League, our Premier League fantasy football our league is going to be underway very, very soon. Keep an eye on Twitter as well for the link to join that as well. Big thank you, Lewis, for joining me over this last hour and 20 minutes nearly, rounding up the start of the NCEL and the North West Counties League this coming weekend. We'll be certainly keeping an eye on it over the course of the season. And if anybody from any of the clubs involved wants to get in touch with us and to come on the show over the course of the season, do get in touch. We'll be more than happy to have you on to discuss your club's seasons as well. From myself, Chris Bell, and from Lewis, thank you for joining us, mate.
Thank you very much.
And we'll speak to you very soon here on the West Yorkshire Football Show.